Alright, a couple of weeks ago, or whenever that was.
It's been 3 weeks.
Okay.
Legit.
This was actually going to be the Oscar one.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brokeback and Midnight Cowboy is kind of a last minute thing.
Right.
And so I really could have just shoved this wherever, but since it was already in my head, I was like, I guess should just go ahead and do that one soon. So we did all of our monster movies now.
Not all of them.
We're just gonna put this tiny little one in here amidst all the Batman stuff.
Yes.
So, which means nobody's going to fucking see this video. I am talking to myself right now, and it is great. So yes, that is the reason no one will see this video. Another reason is you are about to see what it will be like for a white guy to review Shaft. It's gonna be weird for all of us.
Let's get to it
but
together.
I will do my best. I feel so unqualified, I guess.
But you're a movie connoisseur, so there you go.
Okay, so we'll go with that. But yeah, I was going with kind of the race theme, as well as the fact that obviously In the Heat of the Night won 5 Oscars, including Picture, and Shaft obviously got one for... Isaac Hayes was nominated for doing the score, and he won for doing the theme, which won Original Song.
Right.
I think Shaft is actually what we're going to start with, while we're on the subject of the song. Which of course starts us off immediately. And I think one of the reasons this song works so well for people, not only because it's fucking cool, but because it's the perfect introductory song.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we don't really need Shaft to do anything else. Just watching him prowl around the streets as it's playing tells us everything we need to know about him. The song's lyrics are literally just describing him.
This is cool guy entrance music.
Yeah, describing him in really cool ways.
Oh, yeah. God bless you, Isaac Hayes.
Yeah. So, or whatever Scientology was.
Yeah.
Bless you. So,
you're awesome. There you go. That's why we're using Chef today.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So, so he's exactly the iconic image we know. He's just walking around the streets with that song playing. He's got, like, the kind of sweatshirts that come up to here, and he's got the coat and the sideburns, and he's just everything that you've heard about this character if you haven't seen any of the movies, or have only seen Singleton's movie, which is great too, but we'll get to that. I'll probably mention it on the side or something, but we need to go ahead and dive into this. And it's one of those, it's very much a private investigator movie, like a Sam Spade type, only in a very urban setting. And he was kind of the first black representation of this type of character. But obviously doing it in a very different way, obviously, to coincide with that. Where, much like normal private investigator movies like The Maltese Falcon or something, we start off with a very, very basic plot that's just find this person, and it is his journey to find this person that brings him into this very complicated story of a bunch of combating things that he gets caught up in the middle of. It's a very, very classic story, but obviously, how would you be telling this story if not with the classic things there? It's one of those things, it's like a boxing movie. If the cliches aren't in there, there's no reason to see it, because there's nothing here you want to see. It's gotta have that stuff in it, and this movie does. But at the same time, the whole race thing is also quite a factor into the whole thing. Because it's how he's seen with, like, how he's kind of seen as, like, with the white side and the all-powerful side, but he's also got his ties in the opposite world. There's, when Bumpy comes and says, I came to you, his reasoning is, because you're the only black detective with 1 foot in Whitey's trough, is the way he puts it. This movie's really well written.
Sounds like
because it's based on a novel, and the guy that wrote the novel also wrote the screenplay. And the director is Gordon Parks, who also does a really good job handling this really great script. And there's always kind of that racial tension happening throughout the movie, like when he's having a conversation with his superior, kind of, they kind of have that back and forth about, you know, the black side and the white side and which side he's on, or if it's on both sides or whatever. And there's that great moment where the guy takes a black pen that's like pitch black and puts it up to his face and says, "You're not so black." And Shaft just happens to be holding a white coffee cup that he holds up and says, "Well, you're not so white." And it's a really great back and forth between the two of them. And yeah, and then from kind of then on, it's got the racial tensions really kind of add something to this story that we've never seen in it before. And just in general, this is a character like we hadn't seen before. And we'll get into more how he got his iconic status, but the thing about it was, it's really just watching this character that really, like, the story is almost just kind of on the sidelines. Like when you see like the Maltese Falcon or stuff like that. Yeah, Sam Spade's an intriguing character, but it's kind of the whole thing going on. Like it's him, and it's the story, and it's the side characters. It's the whole thing. How Huston handled it, and the script, and all that. This movie, Shaft is kind of the front and center thing, and he is the whole reason the audience is here to begin with. Like, there are saying, like, you know, that when you're a private investigator, you gotta kind of ask around. There's a very long scene in this movie where it's just Isaac Hayes' score playing, and with really hardly any to no dialogue. It's just a montage of Shaft going from place to place saying, "Hey, have you seen this person? No." And just going to the next place. It's kind of a long scene for a "have you seen this person? No" montage. But it's just something about Isaac Hayes' music and the character. It's just all great. You don't mind that this scene is getting us absolutely nowhere in this story. But something about it just kind of fits the whole atmosphere of it. But that's not to say that the movie's meandering, because it's anything but. Like, once we get to where the story's going, and even then, I think that's another reason that scene kind of feels like it fits right in, is not only are we seeing the whole investigation play out, so the scene's important, but also this movie moves really fast. It's an hour 40, but it moves really, really quickly, and there's only 2 scenes, really, where it kind of strays from the plot. Which is very interesting for a movie like this. So, a movie so driven by a specific character. Typically, when you're doing like character pieces, you tend to branch off just for the sake of building the character. You have scenes that just kind of define the character, and the story kind of takes to the sidelines for that stuff. With the exception of maybe 2 detouring scenes that are very brief, this movie stays right on its plot through the whole way to the very end. Literally to the very end. Like, there is no fat on this movie, really. Because we have, obviously, our detours are, Shaft wouldn't be the cool character everybody likes, if he wasn't also, he didn't have that Bond quality, with women. Where it's, he's got a girlfriend that he goes home to, or that she comes home to, really. And then there's a whole scene with that, and this movie actually gets praised a lot for its sex scenes. Like, there are people that actually see Shaft as a bit erotic, as far as the movie itself, because of these scenes. There's only 2 scenes. But yeah, I don't necessarily feel that, but, you know, good for the people that find this movie a bit sexy on top of everything else. But there's also, and then there's the scene later where Shaft is so the epitome of cool that he totally fucks someone that's not his girlfriend. And nobody cares.
He's Shaft!
Yeah, because he's Shaft. That's it. There's no other explanation needed for why he gets away with this, and we still love him. It's like, we should really be dismissing it as like, wow, that is so uncool, because she's like totally devoted to him. But no, it's not that kind of thing. And yeah, and not only that, but he's one of those ones where it's like, I hate to use such a crude term, but I can't really think of another one. He's a pump and dump kind of guy. Where she's, the returning line of, close it yourself, shitty, comes from the whole, like, she's actually the one that calls him out, on, wow, you're great in bed, but you really fucking suck afterwards. You're kind of a piece of shit. But she just leaves happy anyway. She basically calls him a piece of shit, but she's still totally seriously into him. You can tell that she's like, she would totally go for round 2 if he wasn't on the phone. And then there is, And yeah, it's just one of those where he, after we've had the long investigation scene, and then he goes home to his girlfriend, there's the scene where he is there with the same guy, and they're kind of talking about where this case is going. He just says, "What'd you get?" And Shaft's response, "I got laid." And he leaves the scene. He says that, and he fucking walks out the door.
That's brilliant dialogue right there. Can't get away with that nowadays. Now you get laughed off the screen.
Unless you're Shaft.
Yeah, unless you're Shaft.
So anyway, I think if Richard Roundtree were to come back and play this character
Oh
again
my
and
God.
did the same thing, regardless of age,
Yeah,
if he
it
came
still
back
would
and
work.
did the same thing and played the part just as is, I think nobody would question it.
Not at all.
Okay, so him playing, parts that are kind of cheap references like Steel aside, but we'll forget that happened. This is the Richard Roundtree we want to know and love. Okay. But yeah, I say he is the kind of the sole thing, but there is still, some fun side characters in there. The one that stands out to me is the bartender, the really, really flamboyant bartender. Where he's going after those two guys, and he walks behind the bar, and the bartender knows what's up, so he just walks away and says, "Have funsies," as he walks away. And then the conversation they have later about the two women, one of which is the one he ends up banging. But no, for the most part, it's definitely a showcase for one character. Hence the movie's theme song, hence the movie's title, hence the character's iconic status. It's all for a reason. And then, yeah, it has a very interesting climax because it's not really an action movie. So it's not really necessary to have action scenes in it, but there is, some scenes in there that add suspense or could be considered action scenes, I guess. But the very interesting thing about this climax is it is like 90% build up, 10% climax. For a movie like this, that's very interesting. Because it's basically a very long scene about how the climax is going to take place and what exactly the plan is and what's going to go down and how they're going to do it and how everything is going to happen. And then it's just after all that build up, the climax happens really fucking quickly and the movie ends. The climax happens. Shaft walks outside, calls the dude on the phone, brings back one line for one last laugh, and he walks away as the credits roll. It is that fucking fast that this movie ends. So yes, it is really, it's really well put together. It's really, the editing too is really good. There's one particular scene that really stands out when he first finds, the daughter that's been kidnapped. And there's a bit of a standoff. And the editing is really fast, but it's one of those cases where if you've seen any standoff in any movie, the faster the editing gets, the sooner the gun's about to go off. But as soon as Shaft walks in the room, the editing is always that fast. So it always feels like every time we cut to the gun, it's going to go off. And we keep cutting back to it. And it does eventually go off, yeah. But that's a really well done scene, the way it's constructed, and there's a lot of suspense in it. So yes, with all that stuff, this was the same year as Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, I think, and this, I feel like there's more stuff in there. I think Superfly was like a year or two later, but this and Sweetback kind of always get the credit for starting the blaxploitation thing. Which, does make sense, and I've never, I don't know, this one I never quite saw it, but now, looking back on it, it seemed, yeah, you can see where those movies took a lot of inspiration from this, but not just those movies either, but it's astonishing when you look back how much it's clear that Eddie Murphy borrowed from this with Axel Foley.
Yeah.
There is so much of Shaft in Axel Foley. I should have said John Shaft, just We've been doing these innuendos all fucking day with his name. We need to grow up.
I'm trying, man.
So, yes, that's what Shaft is. Now, that's what it sounds like when a white guy reviews Shaft. I hope that was okay. And now we move on to a big Oscar movie. Obviously, In the Heat of the Night won Best Picture, but it also won... Rod Steiger won Best Actor. It won Adapted Screenplay, Editing, and Sound. A lot of the big ones.
What year was this?
So, 67.
So does that have an anniversary coming up?
Perhaps. But I think the movie that won Best Director that year is more likely for that, which was The Graduate.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
Obviously, this one is definitely all, like, the whole surroundings of this movie is the racial tension aspect. Where there has been a murder, just a casual murder, and then Warren Oates, who is this just kind of, cop, finds it, and then Rod Steiger comes in, and he's kind of like he's not kind of like our chief, he's our fucking chief. And then they're investigating, and they find Virgil Tibbs hanging out at the train station, Sidney Poitier. And for the simple fact that he's black, Warren Oates brings him into the station under arrest. Because he's suspicious because he's hanging out and he's black. He's wearing a suit, he's got a suitcase. He feels like there's something off about this dude. Well, obviously it turns out that Virgil Tibbs is a detective. And not only a detective, but the best detective in the city that he is from. And eventually, of course, he has to help them investigate this murder somewhat against his will. As everything around, as this whole racist ass town is closing in around him while he's trying to help solve this murder. While teaming up with Rod Steiger, who himself is not exactly not a racist. Well, no, there is a word or two he drops a couple of times. Yeah, Rod Steiger's character is racist. There's no beating around the bush there. But the great thing about Tibbs is it really wasn't often, if at all, we saw a character in 1967 that was as in control of the situation as he is. He does get angry and he does get frustrated, but he never full out loses his cool. There is one scene, but we'll talk about that, because that's an amazing scene. We'll get to that in a second. But just to kind of immediately, how he kind of shows that he's not the person that they think he is and assume that he is. And kind of right from the get-go, too, there's one, like, the whole, when you can tell he's kind of got a sophistication about him and he's educated because he uses the word whom. And Steiger kind of calls him out on him immediately. But then there's that moment I really like that I don't even know if it's intentionally significant or anything. But it's just something that's always kind of struck me where, to kind of show that he knows he's in control because he's above his surroundings. He commands to stay above his surroundings. It's when Warren Oates is escorting him to the station while he's under arrest. But when they get to the door, it's Virgil opens it himself and just kind of walks through it into the station himself with Warren Oates behind him. And when you're being escorted, you'd think Virgil would just kind of stand there, and Oates would have to open the door and push him through it. But no, he's first in line, and he just opens the door and walks into the station, despite the fact that he's basically in custody. I always thought that really spoke volumes about his character, and it's really something we barely see. Like, it's like just at the cutoff there, right? But it's there, and then obviously all this, we have the scene where he investigates. He basically examines the body and is obviously 10 steps ahead of the coroner because he's that good. And which leads us to our line where Steiger starts dropping racial slurs at him, and we get the most famous line in the movie that has been referenced and quoted and parodied in everything. Pumbaa in Lion King comes to mind.
Yeah.
When he has to answer the question what they call him, where he's from. And of course, this also, by the way, spawned a sequel with that title. That is the title of the movie. And then there's a third one called The Organization. It's like a Tibbs trilogy. And it's just a really, okay, yeah, Steiger did win the Oscar. And a lot of people think that's weird. You see it's a movie about racial tension, and Sidney Poitier is like the headliner, and it's Rod Steiger, the white guy, that wins the Oscar. Now, mind you, Poitier had already won by this point.
Yeah.
So there's that. But also, a lot of people do think Steiger is the standout. Like, legitimately. And I get where they're coming from, because, like, he does do a lot of really good stuff here. He's kind of it's a really interesting performance because he's the really big character, like he's the big performance, with Tibbs kind of the more downplayed one. But regardless of playing the big character, he's also, got subtle things in there. And there's kind of, he's one of those characters that's more complicated than he appears, for sure. Especially as the movie progresses, and he's kind of got that. He's got one mindset at the start of it, and then as he's worked with Tibbs throughout the movie, the way that dynamic kind of plays out. It's very interesting to watch the character kind of somewhat. He doesn't evolve a lot. That's the thing. But there is a little evolution in there by the time Tibbs finally gets on the train at the very end. However, I personally do prefer Poirier of the two, because this character is... There's just so many things that just the way this... It's very much how a character handles his surroundings, especially when everything's working against him, that I feel like really makes an interesting character, and he really just completely sells this whole thing. Like I said, he's in this place where he's getting really worn down by everything that's happening around him and what's being said to him and how he's being treated. But he never flat out loses his cool. He's always kind of realizes where he's in and how not to make it worse. While also maintaining a bit of authority. And then there's moments where, like, he kind of goes the opposite direction of where he probably should be going. Like, when they're hanging out at the train station and they're getting ready he's trying to get him to decide to go, take care of this case. And they're getting frustrated with each other, and then Steiger says, like, it really should just be in my best interest to horsewhip you. And Tibbs' response to that is to ponder and then laugh and say, my father used to say that to me. And he's just kind of like having a happy memory about it, instead of acknowledging really the idea that Gillespie just said, I should horsewhip you. And Tibbs seeming not bothered by it seems to make Gillespie even more bothered by it. So it's really great to see that kind of play out throughout it as their relationship builds as it is. Now, of course, the big scene in this movie, a scene I really, really love. It's kind of a couple of scenes. It's like one big scene of a couple of scenes, really. But it's the whole segment at Endicott's place, which is like this kind of cotton plantation and greenhouse. Where, to get there, they're driving through this this cotton field. And naturally, it's black people in the fields picking the cotton. And here's Tibbs in his suit in this car driving through it and watching this. And just, he doesn't say anything, but you can just tell the way he's looking out the window, just all the kind of... It's just a very profound moment that really kind of defies words. That's why there's no dialogue in the scene. And then they get there, and of course, Endicott is this old racist fuck. So, but Tibbs comes here as a detective, and he's going to show that he's not intimidated by the fact that he just drove through a damn cotton field, and he's standing in front of this racist white guy. So, there's the moment when there's the servant there and he offers them like lemonade or a drink. And of course, the classic response is, oh no, I'm good. And Steiger does the, oh no, I'm good. But Tibbs is all, yes, I will have a drink, thank you. To show you that Tibbs he's not letting his surroundings get to him at all. He's going to be as comfortable as possible while he questions this guy. And is not going to let him feel like he has a lesser authority because the guy's white and he's black. And the guy feels like he's above him already. He's going to make sure that his authority in this position is known, regardless of what color he is. And this scene comes to a big peak in what's probably the most famous scene in the movie outside of the line, the Mr. Tibbs line. And that is, remember, this is 1967. We've rarely, if ever, seen a character like Tibbs. Just a character like him. And then comes the scene where Tibbs is questioning him, and the guy slaps him in the face. And without even hesitating, Tibbs slaps him back. And it's this, oh, fuck moment. And we have this really quick edit to Steiger reacting, and it's like, holy fuck, I have never seen something like this happen, and I have no idea what the repercussions are. Oh shit. But at the same time, Tibbs is not somebody to be fucked with. And really the big payoff for this scene is Endicott he doesn't really have a big reaction back. We can just sense his anger, and he's making threats. And then Tibbs walks out. Tibbs never says anything after the slap. There's just a stare down, and Endicott making threats, and then Tibbs just leaves. And then Steiger leaves shortly after that, and then Endicott's by himself. And once Endicott is by himself, he just starts crying. It's a fucking amazing scene.
Sounds like it.
And then of course we have, it's worth noting this movie was edited by Hal Ashby, who went on to be like one of the more famous directors of the 70s. So there's a couple of really good chase scenes in this too. There's the scene where when Steiger's chasing Harvey, who is Scott Wilson, who you might know from, most people probably know from The Walking Dead, but he's been in a lot of things. And then there's the chase where Tibbs is being chased down by those rednecks. And you can guess where it's a really great scene. It's actually, the confrontation after the chase is actually more suspenseful than the chase is, when they've got him trapped in that warehouse and they're coming at him with chains and they've got him in a corner. But it's just a really good scene overall. Just after a while, this movie reaches a point where it's just one really, really great scene after the other, which is the best kind of movie. Because you have those movies where it really, really just kind of peaks, like at Endicott's Place. That's the movie's peak. But there's still really a lot of great scenes afterwards too, pretty much to the end. This is another one of those plots that kind of folds over into different things, and it's a very it's actually the way, like, if you take away the race aspects of the movie, I feel like this movie would have been a big inspiration for Chinatown. Like, obviously it's not the same thing, but it's kind of like the same style, and the story's kind of in the same vein, where it's kind of, it goes in those kind of, detective movie twists that you don't expect, and goes in directions you're not quite sure where they're going, or how big and important the people involved in it are. I feel a lot of Chinatown in this movie when I watch it. Or should I say a lot of this when I watch Chinatown. But, yes, it's, so there's, The Graduate's a really great movie. It was obviously, the number 2 to this. I have no problem whatsoever this movie is the Best Picture winner. I think it's never really, it's kind of an underrated one in that aspect. It's not one that a lot of people really talk about, at least anymore, at least in the circles I know. But I totally don't mind that it's in that roster, because it's never really... Yeah, obviously it's, a commentary on racism and stuff like that, but it also never stops being what it is, which is a really awesome detective movie that just happens to have those really important factors in it that just really add a lot to the story. So that's really the best way to go about that. So, I really like Shaft. I like Shaft a lot. It's entertaining as fuck, and it's a fantastic, iconic character for sure. But In the Heat of the Night's really just a very kind of... I say superior movie. I don't mean just like superior to Shaft. I just mean, just in general, it's a very superior movie in many aspects. So, yeah. If you haven't seen either of these, I don't know how popular they are with the people who would come across this, but if for some reason you haven't seen these, change that.
All right. So it's another edition of Versus. Next week we have a special, and it's going to be on a lot of movies that not enough people have either seen or give credit to.
It's mostly give credit to. I think most people have seen them.
Most people have seen these movies, but they either forgot about them or they don't know how good they truly are.
Well,
in some
cases. Really what it is
guilty pleasure movies.
It's movies that people hate that we're trying to
get out there.
There's some stuff in here that's good. That's what we're saying.
It's all about awareness this week on the podcast network, because we're in the middle of Batman week starts tomorrow with the conversation that I had with Will and Ben. Yeah, those names have been popping up a little bit lately here on Pop. And that was about Batman vs. Superman when it first got announced in 2013. And then we're going to be replaying the verses of Batman versus The Crow.
So weird that it's here.
I know. The Nolan verse against Burton's Batman. That series, that video is coming up with AJ and his brother, who made a cameo on that video. He'll be joining him, hopefully.
Cameo? That was a 3-hour video.
Well, it was a cameo for the channel, though.
Okay.
Cameo for the channel. He'll be joining for the video next week, hopefully. The Sip and Snack has to do with this week, and of course the review on Friday versus Will doesn't like Warner Brothers. We want to talk about that, so more Will. And then Sunday we will be ending with that versus. So that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.